Moondrop Joe is what I was told is supposed to be pronounced, or you can read it as Jew if you want to read it Western style. DSP IEM $25 and arguably the best DSP IEM so far. Let's jump into it. Hey friends, Steven here, welcome back to another video on Giz Audio. Today we have review of the Moondrop Joe. Jew. I'm gonna call it Jew. Now, if you guys are not familiar with what DSP can do, basically DSP equals built-in EQ. So it changes the frequency response of certain drivers or transducers, if you will. Basically, it gives any IEM the ability to achieve a tuning that is otherwise not possible with the driver setup that it has. For example, the Quarks DSP, Droplet, Tanya DSP, and the Jew all have frequency response curve that usually requires at least 2 drivers to achieve. But of course, all of them only have 1 driver. So DSP is incredible for IEMs, especially in the budget realm where you can use the least amount of drivers to achieve a tuning that is normally gatekeep in IEMs that are a little bit more expensive. Now, it isn't without some downsides. The Quarks DSP and the Droplet mainly both have this issue with notes and transients coming across very blunted. Now, I don't know the actual reason for that. Some reviewers pointed to an issue probably with the DAC unit that's built into each DSP IEM, resulting in some wonky group delays that could affect transients. Not confirmed to be true yet, but that could be one of the reasons. But regardless, DSP IEMs generally are tuned well. They just lack that incisiveness, if you will. All previous DSP IEMs have that issue. Another issue with DSP IEMs is more of a preference thing, if you will. All DSP IEMs have to be either Lightning connection or USB-C because they require power to work. So for those of you who like to plug your IEMs into your DAB or DAC or any source of choice, you can't do that with DSP IEMs. And the third issue is non-detachable cable. You can't swap to a newer cable. If you don't like the cable that comes with the DSP IEM, you're kind of stuck with it. But with all of that con, you do get a trade-off of great quality sound or great tuning at the very least at very dirt cheap prices. We're talking under $25, except for the Droplet, which is somehow $50. Why Moondrop? Long backstory aside, let's finally get into the review of the Jew. We're going to be comparing this one to the other DSP IEMs and see how the Jew fare against its predecessors, if you will. Let's first start off with the tuning. Now, the tuning on the Jew shares a very similar Harman-ish curves to the other DSP IEM. The Jew, however, is the brightest of them all, being that it has the least amount of bass, and also when it comes to bass satisfaction, it is the least there as well. It definitely leans more towards the upper frequencies, upper mid-range, and also the lower trebles. So vocalists and instruments that lives in the higher ranges comes across much more forward, while the bass frequencies tend to stay more behind. So for those of you who like thumpy bass, slamming bass, rumbly sub bass, all those things, the Jew is most likely not for you. Now, it's not devoid of any bass, it's just the bass is less than the other DSP IEMs, that's all. The bass is still there, you can still hear it, and it's possibly the cleanest sounding bass out of the rest of the DSP IEMs, with a trade-off that is, again, the power. Now, one more thing to touch on with the Jew's upper mid-range and treble, if you will, is that it can be too much for some people out there. When it comes to the energy of the vocalist, the energy of the instrument, sometimes it can come across a little bit too much, a little bit too exaggerated at times. So timbre naturalness here kind of takes a hit, but again, it gives you that fun, engaging, and bright signature. Just keep in mind, you do lose out on a little bit of naturalness. And when it comes to treble as a whole, it doesn't have the smoothest treble, but it has quite revealing treble, more revealing treble than any of the other DSP IEMs, giving the Joe, or the Jew, more perceived micro details, more perceived air and incisiveness, if you will. Speaking of details, let's pull up my technical performance scale right here. I would say the Moondrop Joe lands right around slightly bit behind the Aria. It is definitely better than the other DSP IEMs. For me, I think it's mainly due to how much treble you get here in comparison to the other DSP IEM. The Joe is just that much brighter, making the details more apparent and more in your face, as opposed to the other DSP IEMs where the treble kind of rolls off too fast, or maybe hidden by the amount of bass in the case of the Tanya DSP. One other aspect to touch on regarding technical performance is soundstage. Now, soundstage is something that I don't like to talk about often with a lot of IEMs, because a lot of IEMs just give average soundstage at best, but the way the Joe or the Jew is tuned gives it a very spacious sound. I'm talking about the very clean lower mid-range and a delayed rise in the upper mid-range. These two qualities, when paired together, tend to give whatever transducers, IEMs, headphones, this sense of spaciousness. All that plus the amount of air you get in the Joe makes the Joe sound very sparkly and very spacious, airy, if you will. So the perceived soundstage is quite massive and impressive for an IEM. Now on to comparison segment, Jew versus the Quarks DSP. Now, the Quarks DSP comes across more balanced sounding than the Jew. It doesn't lean too bassy, it doesn't lean too bright. Timbre-wise is where the Quarks DSP sounds more natural than the Jew. So for some of you guys out there, that means better. For some of you, means less exciting, whichever camp that you're on. But yes, timbre more natural on the Quarks DSP. Quarks DSP sounds more balanced than the Jew, but the Jew has more details. It has more air, more sparkle, and soundstage on the Jew is more as well. Next is the Droplet. Now the Droplet and the Jew is basically almost opposite of one another. The Droplet is more warm, relaxing. The treble on the Droplet is very, very tame. Timbre-wise, quite beautiful on the Droplet. You won't get any fatiguing feeling whatsoever, and it sounds really relaxing and comfortable to listen to. It's hard not to like the Droplet, but the trade-off is you don't get a lot of details with the Droplet. You don't get a lot of sparkle with the Droplet, as opposed to the Jew, where details, micro details, soundstage, and air is a lot more apparent. I still would recommend just getting the Jew though, because the Droplet comes with its own set of issues that I covered in the full review of the Droplet. And last but not least, we have the newest DSP IEM that came even after the Jew. Is the Tanya DSP. Now I did a review of the Tanya, you can watch that one on the channel after this video, but the Tanya DSP leans more towards the bassy frequencies. I would go as far to say that the Tanya DSP is a bass IEM. It leans into that signature with everything that it has. The rest of the Tanya is actually very nice. Timbre is good as well. Treble is rather smooth, but not as revealing in details because the amount of bass that it has. In contrast, the Jew is tilted very differently. The bass is of course the least out of all DSP IEMs, and the brighter frequency is the most out of all DSP IEMs. So similar to the Droplet situation, we have a complete opposite experience. If you're more of a bass person, go with the Tanya DSP. If you're more of a brighter frequencies, upper mid-range focus, vocal-centric, then go with the Jew. Alright, that's it for review of the Jew, the Joe DSP from Moondrop. For me, I give it a green thumbs up. It's probably my favorite DSP IEM on the market right now. It doesn't have the bass fun, but the amount of details and the spacious soundstage that this IEM is able to give off for the price wins me over. I really enjoy the Jew. Joe. And with all that being said, thank you so much for watching this video all the way to the end. I would like to thank my Patreon members now. For the $9 people, we have Bard, Chadwick K, Norm, Robert, Sunirol, and $18 we have Dr. P, Go to 10, Kirk, Mason, Paul, and Czar. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you want to support the channel yourself, link to Patreons down below. And with all that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out. Bye.